from us here is Suite M119. It's called the Churchill Suite. It is named in honor of Winston Churchill because we're pretty sure that's the suite he used when he stayed on board. He would make a total of 7 wartime crossings under great secrecy, and he would convert much of the Queen Mary to his war offices while he traveled on board. He planned much of the D-Day invasion while sailing here on the ship. Now, over the years, people have walked past M119 and smelled cigar smoke. However, there is a strict no smoking policy on the interior of the Queen Mary. Part of it is because we want to preserve all this beautiful wood that you see here, 6 of which are now extinct, and part of it is in compliance with California law. So when one of our housekeepers smelled that smoke, she keyed herself into the room to let whoever was inside know that they needed to put out their cigar. When she entered the space, she noticed kind of a portly gentleman sitting in the chair in the sitting area. So she approached him and said, "Sir, there's no smoking, you're gonna have to put that out." Now apparently, he did not take to this instruction too kindly because he stood up and he blew a puff of cigar smoke in her face. Then he disappeared into the portrait above the chair, which just so happened to be a portrait of Winston Churchill. Now, if you believe her story to be accurate, we think Churchill would be a spirit returning to the ship later. He did say that he always felt very safe on board the Queen Mary, and that was because of our immense speed. We were literally able to outrun any German U-boat that tried to sink this ship. That meant that it made her ideal for wartime planning, and it could be that he stops by every now and again to kind of relive his glory years. Now, over the years, when we've told this story, people have peeled off at the end of the tour to go back and do some investigating of their own, and you folks are welcome to do so. However, a few determined people have been known to press their face to the door of M119. Now, I don't recommend doing this. First of all, if your fellow guests have not taken a haunted tour that day, they're going to be wondering why you're sniffing a door. Second of all, that door does open outward, so if your face is pressed against it when the people inside try to exit, you will get hit in the face by the door. It seems silly that I have to warn you folks about this, but it's happened before. So now on all of our haunted tours, we make a blanket statement: don't sniff the door of M119. Our next stop is going to be one deck below us, right this way. Right. Alright, so there is a spirit that we somewhat associate with this piano. We call her the Lady in White. And it seems like wherever this piano goes on board the ship, that's where we get the most sightings of her. Now, as you've probably guessed by the fact I'm calling her the Lady in White, she's another one of these.
Original 1930s era Queen Mary piano. We kindly ask that refrain from playing it. Thank you. No, 1930s. 1930s is nice.
I like it.
If I was in the 1930s, 1920s, I would be.
That's so long.
Oh my God, Papa. Whoa.
Beautiful view right here.
God. It's beautiful.
Oh, somebody's candy. Just go in there.
So it seems like wherever you go on board the Queen Mary, you do run the risk of having your very own haunted encounter. That includes if you come through this area trying to find your way to the bow of the ship or the restrooms right behind you. We do get reports of a ship's officer that tends to hang out in this spot, just kind of haunt this area. This same gentleman has also been spotted up in the bridge as well as the officers' quarters. Both of those are open exhibit areas that you folks are welcome to visit at the end of your tours. Now, we think that this is Senior Second Officer William Eric Stark. He died on board the Queen Mary after accidentally ingesting a glass of tetrachloric acid. It's also known as carbon tetrachloride. It was a harsh, dry cleaning solution used to spot treat people's uniforms. Now, there was a cold running throughout the ship. He was one of the men who had caught the bug. He was all stuffed up, couldn't smell very well. He and a few of his crewmates decided to get together at the end of their shifts, relax, drink some gin, take in a hard day's work. He got off his shift first, went to the agreed upon cabin, got out a bottle, poured everybody a glass of gin. And then because he was waiting around for a little while for his buddies to show up, he decided to get one drink in ahead of the rest of them, picked up one of the glasses, downed it in one gulp. He did feel a burning sensation in his throat and thought that was kind of odd, but ignored it. Now, when his crewmates arrived at the cabin, they were all about to take a sip of their drinks, but they didn't have colds. So they were able to smell pretty much right away that it was not an alcohol smell, it was some weird chemical smell. Did some investigating. While it had been a gin bottle, turns out the steward had poured what was left of a much larger bottle of tetrachloride into an empty gin bottle for compact storage, and then had tucked it away, assuming nobody would drink it. Now, when William Stark figured out what happened, he did go to the ship's doctor. He seemed to be doing okay. He wasn't immediately falling ill like we see in the movies. So the doctors said, you might be okay. We can either pump your stomach or you can monitor the situation and drink a ton of water, see if you can flush it out on your own. William Stark chose the easy route, just monitor the situation. Now, he returned back to the cabin and continued drinking gin, and I'm sure that could not have helped his condition any. About halfway through the night, he did start to feel sick. Or rather than return to the ship's doctor, he went back to his own cabin to try to sleep it off. He would be discovered the next morning in a coma. 2 days later, the Queen Mary arrived at port, and as they were offloading William Stark into an ambulance, he would die in transit to the hospital. And we think because he met such an unexpected, kind of grisly end here on the ship, perhaps that's why his soul remains on board. We do have a recording from a history tour that went through the bridge, and you can hear the tour guide. It seems like at least one person knows where I'm going with this. Room B340. Chances are, if you have seen any of the ghost hunter type shows that take place on our ship, they have gone into B340. And that's because the room was shut down for quite a long time. There were so many complaints coming out of there, things like lights turning on and off, dresser drawers opening and closing, the water in the sink running when nobody was home, that those complaints then resulted in a refund or switch to a different room. And it happened enough times that it just made sense to take the room out of service altogether. But then the ghost hunter shows started going inside, and interest in renting out the haunted room grew and grew, until finally gave in to demand. We remodeled B340 and reopened it on Friday the 13th, April 2018. So you can now stay in B340, but if you do, you actually have to sign a waiver that states if anything weird happens, it's not our fault. You knew what you were getting into when you asked for the haunted room.
That's funny.
Now, the complaints coming out of that room can actually be found all the way back in the 60s when the Queen Mary was still sailing. A third-class passenger was staying in the room alone. She woke up because her covers fell to the floor. Now, she figured she'd probably just kicked him off in the middle of the night, no big deal, picked him up, went back to sleep. But it happened again, and again, and again. And because she was half asleep, it took a little while for her brain to catch up to itself, for her to realize that she was not dreaming, this was actually happening. She was playing tug-of-war with someone over the sheets. But as I said, she was in B340 alone. Understandably frightened, she sat up and she opened her eyes, and then she screamed and pressed the call for the steward, because there was a man standing at the foot of her bed. Now, the steward happened to be just down the hall when it happened, so he heard her scream, saw the light come on, came sprinting up the hall, and burst into her room. The two of them tore the place apart, but, of course, there was no one else to be found. It was just the two of them. And because the steward was just down the hall when it happened, had anybody entered or left her room, he would have seen it happen. In the 80s, a housekeeper had just finished cleaning B340. All she had left to do, now that she had made the bed, was to get a set of fresh towels. So she stepped out to her cart, picked up the towels. By the time she stepped back into the room, just a second or two later, all of the bedding, including the fitted sheet, had been pulled from the bed and dumped in the middle of the floor. Now, why the spirit has an issue with sheets, I don't know. It does kind of seem to be his thing. There was a death in the room in 1947. Now, if you've come across a YouTube documentary about the room, they've probably told you a story about a grisly family annihilator in there. Killed his whole family, then killed himself. I am happy to report that that never happened. The closest thing we've found to it is a murder that happened in Virginia, and the only connection to the Queen Mary was that the grandmother sailed on board around that time. So we're not sure if maybe that's how the story migrated its way onto the Queen Mary, but it still didn't even happen in that room. The only death that occurred in there was that a third-class passenger, who was kind of an older gentleman, passed away in the bed in the room. Now, we're not entirely sure if he is the one that haunts the space, because dying peacefully in your bed isn't the best recipe for a ghost, but we've nicknamed that spirit Walter. And it seems like we've been getting complaints about Walter throughout the hotel rooms on our ship. Or at least we blame it on Walter. A few people throughout the ship will sometimes feel like somebody is sitting down on the end of their bed when they prop themselves up, thinking they're going to see their loved one having just returned from getting water or ice or something like that. Their loved one is still sound asleep in the room right next to them. No one else is there. Occasionally when this happens, people report a voice that says, "I'm so cold." So if you're staying in our hotel tonight, good luck. B340 is going to be the very first hotel room that we pass. It'll be immediate.
See if this room attendant has it, and then I'll let you guys in it. It does.
Oh, cool.
Let you in real quick.
Cool. Thanks, man. I've seen it on so many people's YouTube channels. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm scared.
She won't go in.
I think you can go in there. I've seen people actually like standing right next to the door and they end up fainting.
For real?
Yeah. Like,
They hear, they knock on the door. They hear knocking back. It's one room nobody's allowed to go in or want to go in. Oh, cool.
Oh my god.
It has a distinctive smell for some reason.
Yeah, that smells weird.
Yeah, it does, huh?
Oh my god.
Which is weird.
This is crazy. E340. Come on, Meyer. Get in here.
They have pictures of the ghost sightings right here. I don't know if you want to get them.
I want to run in here and just
Oh, I see it. That's cool. Right there.
Have you guys seen the pool?
Yeah, we've seen it from the outside. But we've seen it from the
It's
inside.
like the most you can see.
Oh my god, they actually.
They said there would be like footprints, like from water, but like there was never, there hasn't been water in there for a while.
Wow, that's pretty
Oh
cool.
my god, it's so crazy.
Scaredy cat. Let's see if we can get pictures. Oh my god. Yeah, it's a Ouija board.
It feels light in here, but it feels so heavy in here. Like I felt it.
Yeah.
I thought I was just like, oh my god.
Thanks so much, man.
Yeah, no problem. You guys have a great day.
You too.
I made our day.
That was rare. Not a lot of people see it.
Thanks. Oh my god. How'd you feel about that?
It's pretty.
That felt heavy in there. Like, I was like, I feel something. How did you feel about it when you went inside?
It was stuffy. It smelled weird.
What'd you smell?
I don't know how to explain it. I guess it smelled like burnt coffee, but it's not a room nobody usually uses. So how's there a smell of coffee in there? And it smells like rotten, like coffee. I don't know if that makes sense.
Ew.
Yeah.
For me, like, I went in the center of the room and it felt like I felt like if we were inside, like, in the sea and the pressure of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I felt. And then I felt like it was kind of hard to breathe in there. That dude was really cool, though.
That's we are so rare lucky to do that because that's the only room that celebrities are able to get, like Shane Dawson and all those guys, because they get special treatment. We got special treatment. We're not even celebrities. So we got to be in that room without paying it.
Yeah. We just got special treatment. Like, thanks, guy. He was really cool.
Let's go on B40, the haunted room in the whole ship.
That's so
The most
crazy.
haunted room in the whole ship.
That is so crazy. Man, I'm still freaked out. It really felt heavy in there. Like, I was freaked out. I didn't even want to be in there because I felt like something's gonna. I feel like a bad energy, like something bad was gonna happen to me if I stayed any longer.
Let's go upstairs then, because that's pretty cool.
I don't know if any of you folks have had the chance to ride one of our original elevators yet today, but if you have, you've probably noticed that the inside doors are pretty reflective. Now, in 2015, one of my coworkers named Sabria, she was distracted with her paperwork. She pressed the call button for the elevator. Doors opened. She stepped inside, still distracted. Now, the doors closed, and she turned around to press the call button for the deck she was going to, and she finally looked up from her paperwork and noticed the reflection of somebody standing behind her. Now, she felt really silly because whenever we end up on an elevator with a guest, we like to make you guys feel welcome. So pretty much all of us will say hello. Quite a few of us will ask you if we can help you get where you're going. So she turned around to say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I was distracted and didn't see you. Can I help you get where you're going?" And there was nobody behind her. And when she turned back around, the reflection in the door was gone. Now, I never met Sabria, and that was because that day in 2015, she filled out her paperwork and quit. This is not the first or the last time that somebody has quit because of the spirits on board our ship. All right, folks, last stop, White Knight Falls. I would. Go right. So this is the setup for the Queen Mary's original fire station. This was not the original location. We're still looking at blueprints to figure out where it was, but this is what it would have looked like. Thankfully, what I have to tell you is less about the fire station, more to do with one of these. are watertight doors. Originally, there were 38 of them on board the Queen Mary, and they were always closed in the event of an emergency or potential danger. So when the Queen Mary was a troop ship in World War II, she carried enough passengers that Hitler and the Emperor of Japan actually put out a bounty on the ship. So these doors would have always been sealed due to the threat of torpedo attack due to that bounty. Now, they also would have been closed in rough weather or dense fog, and that was just in case there was something in the water that they couldn't avoid. Now, in 1966, the Queen Mary did encounter a patch of very dense fog, and the sea was very, very calm, and that combination meant that it was very likely that they would not see an iceberg before it was too late. So the captain made the decision to order the watertight doors shut just in case. It was better to be ahead of the game than try to catch up. Now in the bridge there is a panel of lights, and each one indicates one of the watertight doors. And they would click on one by one as the door was sealed properly. And he noticed that the light for door 13 had not come on. Now he figured it was probably a short in the panel, or maybe the light bulb burned out, but either way somebody did need to go investigate and make sure no damage had come to the door. When that crew member arrived at door 13, he was met with a horrific sight. An 18-year-old fireman from the boiler room had gotten crushed in the watertight door. He was closed with about 700 pounds of pressure. And what was worse, this young man was actually still alive when his crewmate found him. He was unconscious, but he was still breathing. Now the doctors, of course, rushed down. They gave him some morphine for the pain, opened the door. Like William Stark, this young man would die in transit to medical attention. To this day, we're not entirely sure how he became crushed in the watertight door. One popular theory is that he was playing chicken. He got bored and was jumping back and forth across the doorway to see how many times he could get through before the door slammed shut. We have been told that that maybe wasn't super likely because the Queen Mary was considered one of the safest ships at sea. So, if one of her crew members had been putting that reputation at risk by acting foolish or reckless, they would have lost their job. They would have been confined to quarters, kicked off at the next port. So we're not entirely sure if he would be willing to risk his job just to alleviate some boredom. Another popular theory that makes a little bit more sense is the idea that he dropped something. A lot of the time, the men that worked in the boiler rooms would take breaks in the engine room, especially by the propeller shafts, because the constant spinning kept the area much cooler than the 115-degree boiler room, almost acted like a fan. So the idea is that this young man was taking his break when the captain ordered the watertight doors sealed, but he needed to be back in the boiler room in time for roll call. So rather than wait for all the doors to seal and then walk through manually opening them, he ran through as many as he could, made it through door 13 just fine, and then realized he dropped a tool. When he turned around to step back through the door, he misjudged the timing, and that was when he became crushed. Now you can go visit door 13 for yourselves. It's in the engine room, it's an open exhibit area, and people will go down there and they feel like they're being messed with. If somebody is poking them or patting them on the back. Sometimes when this happens, they'll come away with greasy smudges or handprints on them that slowly fade away. Other people have reported disembodied whispering, and just a few.
Any assistance, my name is Akbar, or Tim, whichever one is okay with you. And just let me know. All right, thank you. And you all need any assistance? No, I'm good there. Awesome. Have a great day.
Okay, so this is the entryway to the first class swimming pool. Now, unfortunately, I cannot take you folks inside. And that's because it's been closed for a few years now for restoration purposes. If you remember at the top of the tour, I mentioned that we had to replace broken original material with more original material. A lot of the tile in there that has gotten damaged after 80 years of people walking on it is made out of mother of pearl. So it's going to be a little while before we can fully restore that. I think the plan is to make it look all nice, make sure this little balcony area is nice and stable, and then we'll open the doors and let people kind of walk out onto the balcony and look out across the top of the pool. Now the reason the pool is so popular, other than the fact we used to be able to go inside, is the fact that it's probably the most active location on board the Queen Mary. People have reported a woman in an old-fashioned bathing suit diving off the edge and vanishing. A few people have reported wet footprints appearing on the deck. However, there is no water in there any longer. It's just a lighting projector to make the pool look creepy. And it's home to probably your most infamous spirit, Jackie. She's a little girl, somewhere between 6 and 8 years old, blonde hair, blue eyes. She's actually pretty playful. A lot of the time, people will see her skipping along the edge. A few times people have reported seeing her peeking over a railing, kind of like she's trying to get you to play peekaboo or hide and seek with her. Few people have reported hearing her singing. Parents specifically will feel like a little hand is holding theirs, and when they look down expecting to see their child has kind of wandered up and is looking through the doors. And Jackie was spotted as recently as January 17th of this year. And I know that because I was the tour guide on that tour. It was a tour for high schoolers. I think they might have called ahead and they were on like a high school trip or something. Either way, I was in the middle of a paranormal ship walk, which it seems like that's where things always happen. I let a few of them come down these stairs ahead of me as I was waiting for the others to catch up. So they had time to look through the windows and check out the pool. And I came down the stairs and started talking about Jackie. I got to the point where I said she'll be peeking over a railing, and one of the girls on my tour, probably 15 years old, started freaking out. She was hyperventilating and crying, so of course I stopped everything because I think I'm going to need to call her an ambulance. So I'm standing here going, "Are you okay? What's going on? Talk to me." And she keeps saying, "That's what I saw. That's what I saw. I swear to God, that's what I saw." And she swears that she saw Jackie peeking over the railing at her. Now, as far as how Jackie ended up in the pool, we're not sure. The theory that makes the most sense would be that a little girl drowned in the pool and that's why she haunts the place. But we do not have record anywhere of a drowning on the Queen Mary. We've had quite a few other deaths. I've touched on a few of them during our tour today, but no drowning. No children, no adults, nobody. And if that's the case, then we're not entirely sure how Jackie would be haunting a pool. Now, we do think because there was a time when the Queen Mary was packed with kids, records were sealed, and water was in the second-class pool, perhaps that's where Jackie comes in. It's during those bride and baby crossings. Of course, the whole point of those crossings was to bring children to New York, so the ship would have been packed with them. Records were sealed because it was a military operation, and water was in the second-class pool because it had been converted to a laundry to keep up with the amount of cloth diapers being used. In fact, these voyages are sometimes referred to as Operation Diaper. So we think Jackie could have been a little girl here on the ship during Operation Diaper, made her way down to the second-class pool, probably as it was being refilled after being cleaned, so nobody would have been down there, and she fell in.
Smells refurbished in here. Injured. Well, it's the same company that made the Titanic lifeboat. Slippery. during Halloween. They turn into like a maze, Halloween maze. Halloween haunted house. It's below deck, going deeper. Huh? Deeper.
So, here now in number 2, entrance 2 and 1 are identical design. So what you see here, we've seen before in number 12. Now, this area is vast, it's complex, got a lot of moving parts, but it's actually very simplistic in the way it operates. And I'm going to try to explain that right now. So, once the steam has been created, it's going to be passing through the pipes eventually through these pipes up here. One here, one here. It will eventually be passed through a series of turbines.
That's right here, Mark. Number 13. This is where it actually happened. I got it wrong. That's on the door and they crushed the guy that people thought was creepy. The number on it had 13. This is the door that person died on.
Yeah.
This is where they feel somebody. The worker that guy, the ghost that passed away, his spirit's right here. People feel him touch you or whisper.